When it comes to superpowers, bigger? Yeah, it's not always better. Just ask Ant-Man. Some of our favorite heroes have been powered down from their comic book counterparts, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Hear us out, folks. If the Guardians of the Galaxy were at their full strength, those movies might have been a lot shorter. Scarlet Witch. To be fair, the Scarlet Witch has gotten a lot stronger during her time in the MCU. She's gone from giving the Avengers bad dreams in Age of Ultron to standing up against the Mad Titan Thanos in Endgame. In the comics, we've seen Wanda completely change reality, like in the House of M storyline, when she created a world ruled by mutants. But the thing about her MCU counterpart is that when she and her brother Pietro were first introduced, they couldn't even use the word mutants in the MCU because of copyright issues with Fox.
I'm still me, I think.
So while her powers were downgraded, she also wasn't really a mutant like she was in the comics. Plus, while Wanda's shown off some more incredible powers in the source material, she's also shown off her less than stable side. Wanda can be unpredictable at best, and sometimes her instability costs her friends dearly. She's even destroyed Hawkeye at one point, but don't worry, he got better. The MCU Wanda traded in a few extra hex bolts for some improved mental health, and honestly, that's a pretty good deal. Although we're all hoping to see Wanda use her reality-shaping powers and chaos magic in WandaVision. The Incredible Hulk. Okay, don't get me wrong, I love the fact that the Hulk is an unstoppable punching machine, most of the time. In the comics, the Hulk is perpetually furious and predisposed to let his fists do all the talking. In fact, he's so out of control that his friends and allies spend a lot of time trying to control him instead of fighting against the forces of evil. They've even tried firing him off into space because he's so unpredictable and dangerous. This may seem like an extreme option, but what can you do when you're faced with a character like the Hulk?
Sorry.
The MCU version of the Hulk may not be as strong, but he's also easier to rein in. Especially since we got the first glimpse of his smarter side in Thor Ragnarok. Yes, seeing him go all out and wreak havoc is great, but in small doses. He was together enough to exile himself instead of forcing his friends to make the call. There are many more dangerous forms of the Hulk in the comics, including Red Hulk and Worldbreaker Hulk, which are way more hazardous than the smart Hulk we ended up with. But sometimes you need a teammate who can help you out instead of making everything worse. Doctor Strange.
Why are you doing this to me?
Doctor Strange is a relatively recent addition to the MCU, but he's already one of its more powerful characters. He's a master of the mystic arts, and has access to a whole sanctum sanctorum filled with handy magical items like the Cloak of Levitation. Even without access to the Time Stone, we've seen him easily overpower Loki, who once took a whole team of Avengers to defeat. I'm not trying to say that the MCU version isn't insanely strong, it's just that he's a far cry from the nearly immortal comic book being fans are familiar with. Doctor Strange can be defeated, but he doesn't age and he's immune to diseases.
Oh yeah, right.
There's a reason his predecessor was called the Ancient One, and that's because people in his position tend to be pretty hardy. In addition to his own magic, he can also utilize energy from beings on other dimensions to kick his spells up a notch. Basically, he can pull a lot cooler tricks than sneaking into the restricted section of a library, which is a trick so basic, Harry Potter did it in his first year of Hogwarts, albeit not very well. But Doctor Strange's powers have been enough for him to face his enemies so far without overpowering them easily. Without overpowering them so easily, it failed to be entertaining for those of us watching. As villains get stronger, we have a feeling the Sorcerer Supreme will start to flex the full extent of his abilities. Thor. Thor is one of the more popular characters in the MCU, and it's not just because he can sling lightning bolts around. We've seen the God of Thunder grow up so much since the first Thor movie when he was a smug, irresponsible, self-centered heir to the throne of Asgard, with bleached blonde eyebrows. Now he's just a semi-responsible heir to the throne of Asgard. In the comics, Thor is frankly a lot more godlike than he is in the MCU. He can tap into the Odin Force to give himself a boost and do things like teleport the entirety of Asgard in the sky about New York City, which is a lot more impressive than the Asgardian relocation we saw during Avengers Endgame. Thor still has impressive abilities when compared to us mere mortals, and the fact that he's less godlike actually works out in his favor. It makes his struggles more relatable, his beer belly more realistic, and allowed us to see his emotional growth play out on the big screen. Emotional intelligence may not seem like the most exciting superpower, but sometimes the only option is talking things through. Except, when it isn't. Iron Man. When you're as talented as the late great Marvel comic book legend Stan Lee, sometimes you have to challenge yourself. After helping create some of our favorite characters, he decided if he could convince his fans to like a downright unlikable hero. He's a spoiled, rich, entitled guy with a drinking problem who made his fortune profiting off war. Even though his comic book counterpart managed to quit drinking, he's still not nearly as likable as the MCU version of Tony Stark. But it's a trade-off, since he even has a more impressive array of Iron Man suits for every single occasion. Meanwhile, the MCU Tony went and destroyed all the suits he'd built up for no real good reason. Since he didn't stop ever being Iron Man, he just became a less prepared one. Let's not forget that the reason comic book Tony has so many different devices is because he's faced so many different enemies with various powers. As they say, necessity is the mother of invention, and he's needed some creative gadgets over the years. Even though the MCU version of Tony certainly has some adventures, he was never as powerful simply because he never had to be. And sadly, we'll never get to see Tony develop the devices we know he was capable of, since his time in the MCU was cut so very short. Gamora. In the comics, Gamora is known as the most dangerous woman in the universe, and for real good reason. She's an incredible assassin who has mastered the use of many different weapons, combat styles, and stealth techniques. And in the MCU, well,
this wasn't the plan.
She once tussled with a raccoon and a tree over a magic ball and didn't even end up winning that battle. But the thing is, MCU Gamora is as strong as she needs to be, and she's certainly a better fighter than the other Guardians of the Galaxy. In the Guardians of the Galaxy, she and her fellow Guardians got together out of necessity, and eventually this forced camaraderie ceased to be forced and blossomed into genuine friendship. Aww. If Gamora was as powerful as she is in the comics, she may not have needed their help, or their group dynamic could have been considerably different than what we ended up with. She may not know how to dance, but Gamora clearly knows how to keep a team balanced, even if it means scaling down her powers a little bit. Or getting tossed off the side of a cliff. Sorry, too soon? Drax the Destroyer. For a guy called the Destroyer, the MCU version of Drax really isn't that strong. Maybe Drax the Literal would be a better, or at least a more accurate moniker. Definitely not Drax the Invisible. We see you, Drax. The character is very different from his comic book counterpart, who was created to destroy the Mad Titan Thanos. So naturally, he's unnaturally strong, durable, and has mastered the alien martial art form Dwi Theet. But his role in the MCU is completely different than in the comics, so it makes sense that his strength level isn't the same. Sure, Drax wanted to take down Thanos, but from a narrative standpoint, he really exists to add some humor to the Guardians of the Galaxy. And that's something he definitely accomplishes.
Ha! Thank you!
This is a major departure from the comic books, and it's one I'm definitely okay with. Odin. Thanos gets a lot of credit for being the worst father in the MCU, but I think Odin is right there with him, to be honest. If being a bad father was a superpower, Odin would be one of the most overpowered characters of all time. But it's not a superpower, at least that's what my kids tell me. Anyway, we know Odin once ruled Asgard and created an era of peace right after he engaged in an era of extreme conflict. He had the power to banish Thor to Earth and create a worthiness requirement for Mjolnir. But other than that, we did see him spend an awful lot of time napping. He can call it Odin sleep if he wants, but seeing an old guy nap isn't exactly impressive. In the comics, Odin is insanely powerful, and so is the Odin Force. He can read minds across dimensions, and has stood up to heavy hitters like Galactus and the Silver Surfer without breaking a sweat. Ain't no thing. But it's actually a good thing that he spent so much of his time in the MCU napping, because it gave his kids time to shine, even the son he clearly didn't love. Thor and Loki are two of the most popular MCU characters, and giving Odin greater powers would have taken the focus off them, which is the last thing most fans want. Falcon. Yeah, I get it, Sam Wilson's superhero name is Falcon, and has a super suit which has wings and allows him to fly. But why doesn't he have any cool bird-related powers like he does in the comic books? He can't even command birds to do his bidding, which is a definite disappointment. But to be fair, we all know Sam got an upgrade at the end of Endgame, and he'll be taking on the role of Captain America. And Cap kinda has his own branding going on and doesn't need an inevitable bunch of CGI birds getting in the way of red, white, and blue. Sam could be a stronger hero if he had some avian assistance, but he has what it takes to hold the shield of Captain America, and that's what's really important. We salute you, Cap! Grandmaster.
You are now meeting the Grandmaster.
The Grandmaster is one of the oldest beings in the universe. He's essentially immortal and has telepathic and telekinetic powers, at least in the comic books. In Thor Ragnarok, his most impressive power was looking suspiciously like handsome movie star Jeff Goldblum, which, to be fair, is a pretty incredible ability. But in the movie, he's not orchestrating any cosmic level games, he's just locking heroes up in an arena and watching them punch each other, and doing freaky stuff in spaceships. He's exactly as powerful as he needs to be for that particular storyline, allowing our heroes to feasibly escape Sakaar and head off into space where nothing bad ever happened to them. Although his toned-down powers worked for now, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't hoping to see a more powerful Grandmaster in the MCU at some point. Really, we all just deserve more Jeff Goldblum. What do you think about the way these comic book characters were powered down for the MCU? Do you think it was a good call, or are you disappointed that there aren't more heavy hitters on the big screen? Share your options with us in the comment section below, and don't forget to click subscribe for more videos from us here at CBR. Thanks for watching.